And again, focusing on delivery methods in terms of deliverables. And finally, develop foxhole friendships. The reality is that there's a bond that is created between those who suffer together, between those people who face life-changing events together, who lay it on the line together. They call this foxhole friendships. And you don't develop this from day one, but after you do your downsizing, really focus on these foxhole friendships. And there's going to be involved a greater level of transparency, which I'll talk about in a second. But there's a way to get these people that they really are bonded together and they become a great team and a great culture. Community, take a fresh look at your community, your suppliers, your customers, lenders, not only the government, but the federal programs, but especially local. What can your associations do? And for every one of these, I ask myself, what value do they provide me today? What value could they provide me in the future? What value can I provide them today? What value can I provide them in the future? You know, Jack Welch had a great thing. And like I said, I stole a lot of things from Jack Welch. I actually had a chance to meet him. I was interviewed by him. And I had his personal recruiter come after me for 3 years, but I was in the process of doing something else. So I did not go to GE, which would have been an amazing experience. It's a great company, especially with Jack there. But Jack had something that I just think is profound. When you get ready to walk into a sales situation, ask yourself the ability to answer 4 questions that the customer may have. 1, why should I listen to you? 2, why should I listen to you now? 3, why should I buy from you? 4, why should I buy from you now? You answer those 4 questions if you walk into a sales situation, you got it nailed. Engage your community. And then look at the new ground rules. Transparency is, I believe in this new normal, as you're going to be looking at suppliers and customers, you're going to have greater transparency. And this talks about understanding each other's margins, understanding the commitment is higher commitment and creativity. We've got to accelerate this movement of goods and cash throughout the whole value chain. And look at a supermarket. The best supermarket in the country makes less than 1% on a dollar. How they make all their cash is by cash flow, cash velocity, inventory turns. So we've got to look at creative ways to get our supplier to deliver us the goods, to get it to the customer and get that cash to come back. And I have no problem for distressed companies in certain marketplaces going to my suppliers and saying, here's how much money I make. I'm cutting my margin by this much. I will show you my books. I want you to do the same. And if they want to survive and they're distressed also, guess what? They're going to play with you. Finally, commerce. Almost done here. Reinforce the value proposition. It's amazing how, some people just assume their value proposition. I try to ask the value proposition almost every week, if not every month, with my management team. Focus on a short-term game plan. Focus on delivery cycle excellence. Whatever you were doing wrong as a company before, when you go in to do the turnaround, make sure the delivery is there. And by the way, I'm not one for inspecting product. It just tells me we didn't do our job earlier. But early on in the turnaround, I do have inspectors. We make sure that everything is going to the customer is absolutely high quality. Liquidity management is something you're going to be looking at every day. You'll be dreaming about it at night. And then thirdly, you got to manage that culture because it's those people going to move you ahead. Long-term game plan. I'm up on my time right now, so I'll make this real quick. But as somebody who's done strategy for 40 years, was trained at Booz, one of the last people ever trained by Barbara Minto, who wrote the definitive book on strategy and strategic thinking. I guarantee you that we all don't make strategic decisions every single day. I guarantee you we are all exposed to strategically relevant information every single day. And the trick is to capture that. I'm a big believer in physical war rooms. Story for another time, how Jim McDonald used to come into our war rooms and just sit there after work, put his feet up on the desk and just look at the boards and understand what the market looked like, the customers, the competitors, and the technology. But you need to start collecting information from day one because more information organized correctly will help you make better decisions. And then finally, ask the right questions. I talked about this before, is the trick is not to know the answers. If you already know the answer, it's not strategy, it's tactics. Strategy is about coming up with the great questions and answering the great questions and understanding what they are. So, bottom line, I don't think there's going back to normal in the way we viewed it in the past. That's my personal opinion. I think fundamental changes have occurred and they're going to continue to occur. In fact, we'll see major changes continue out through mid-2021. I think many businesses and more importantly, their marketplaces are going to require entirely new ways of doing business, of talking to their supply chain, of managing themselves, of embracing technology, of building their culture. And the 5 C's that I propose is simply some way to look at that. So with that being said, that is company restoration in the new normal, and I will open it up to questions.
Thank you, Don.
Hey,
That
Don,
was awesome. Any questions from?
hey, Don, this is Mark again. Sorry for being asking all the questions, but
Oh, go ahead.
to take this saying that other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play? Is there any good news?
Yes, yes. You got to remember, I started off in automotive engineering, then I went to aerospace engineering, but then most of my career has been in technology. I love change. I love pressure. I love pain. I love disruption, because the great technologies, you view that as an opportunity to evolve in the marketplace. The old days of getting into a market and doing what you can for 5 or 6 years, markets and the velocities and the products and the technology are changing so quickly. To get in, make a bunch of money, and figure out how it's going to morph in the next 18 months. So yes, I view right now as a phenomenal time to build some great businesses by looking over the horizon, identify those macro trends that you think are worth investing capital in, and building companies around those macro trends. So yes, as a technologist and as a technology executive, I think right now is an amazing time to move forward. And I embrace changes. People don't realize that the old saying, the Chinese proverb of "May you live in interesting times," is actually an insult. But I tell people, I'm not Chinese. I want interesting times. I want change. I want disruption. And if I can't disrupt a marketplace, or if the marketplace is not disrupting on its own, I'll try to do it myself, because that's an opportunity to get ahead of your competition, to react quicker than they do. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thanks.
Hey, Don, that was a great presentation. Really appreciate it. Are there any particular industries where you think we're going to see the most dramatic changes and also opportunities?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, well, first off, I follow the world of artificial intelligence a lot, because as Jim mentioned in my bio, I was one of the early pioneers. And if you remember the original movie Tron, that technology, we were the first ones to take that technology and apply it to the design of large-scale $400 and $500 million factory automation systems. In fact, actually, in animate. In fact, one of the most enjoyable times I ever had is 1986. I sat next to Lee Iacocca for 2 hours and let him fly around a Chrysler Liberty plant that wasn't even built yet, but he could fly around like he was in a little helicopter and see the cars being assembled, the robots moving, and everything. But I think virtual reality is going to increase for training, for entertainment. Augmented reality is where a lot of money is going to. And if you're not familiar with that term, augmented reality is simply overlaying augmented information on top of a real world screen. So it's like looking at your phone or having glasses on. Right now in the US Treasury, where they print coins and they print dollar bills and they're mints, they have now got a system where the maintenance people wear these glasses, and through the glasses is an electronic display of what they should touch and what they should move and what needs to be unscrewed or screwed in and stuff like that. So I think augmented reality, virtual reality, AI is touching everything. It's such a broad market. I was asked to speak to a bunch of retired generals and CEOs last year. It was all about artificial intelligence. You would not realize in all the ways artificial intelligence is going to touch our life. Now, what scares me when I mention that China is spending more on AI than we do, we spend more from a military standpoint. And one of the last companies I ran was an artificial intelligence company for the DoD. So I am relatively familiar with what we're doing from an AI perspective. But from a social media and a malicious standpoint, I am concerned that people can use AI to create havoc. And like, for example, one of the countries that's known for being one of the most popular scam countries is Romania. They're putting a lot of money on the black market into artificial intelligence to trick people into giving them their money. Other industries, I'd have to take a good look. Actually, it'd be worth me to write a paper on that in terms of what industries I see and where the biggest change is going. But the electric car and self-driving cars industry is going to move even quicker. I told everybody 4 or 5 years ago that we would have self-driving cars, and they said, no, it's not for 10, 15 years. We got them today. We've got them. Tesla, by the way, has a market cap now. It's greater than every other automotive company put together. It's amazing what they've done. I would look at battery technology. We've got more and more things being powered by the battery. And what I do is I follow a group of engineers that used to work for Tesla. They left, and they are trying to develop a graphene oxide battery. And I don't know if you know much about graphene. If you don't, look it up. It's the material of the future. It's a single atomic thickness layer of carbon where you could take an elephant and put it on it and it wouldn't break. It's got amazing super conductivity capabilities. And if you could make a commercially viable graphene battery, you would take the 750 pounds of lithium ion batteries in a Tesla car and take it down to about 50 pounds. That's also related to the Internet of Things. Everything is touching the computer, is touching the internet now. So one of the things we need is a much better way to manage all the things that are associated with our social security number or our personal identifier with what's touching the internet. I'm kind of the neighborhood nerd, so as people want to cut the cord or they want to put in a mesh network or something like that, they call me, and as long as they give me a nice glass of bourbon and we sit there and talk while I do it, I set up their systems for them. But it's amazing. I mean, in my house right now, I have 17 devices touching the internet between Alexas, Apple TV, my computers and devices and things like that. So the whole Internet of Things is something to watch for. In traditional markets, I think you're going to see a fundamental change. Fast food markets are never going to be the way they were. They're realizing now that there's you can do a lot of business by drive-thrus. Will they ever have dine-in? Absolutely, but I think it's going to be different. I mean, I could go through what I see industry by industry, and I don't know if I gave you a very good answer to a really good question that requires a lot more thought than I'm giving you right now. But, you know, the key thing is just to look over the horizon. We know people are going to be working at home more often. People are going to work digitally. They're going to interact more often. How do you manage that? How do you do that? And I'm already seeing a black market for how to get around the system too. My son works for a company where they keep track of his keystrokes and his mouse movements. Well, they don't know they're working with a double E with an IQ greater than 140. So he developed a whole robot that takes just to tick them off, it touches the keyboard and moves his mouse every so many seconds. And he said everybody in his company is just writing garbage because they're supposed to be typing on their keyboard. And so they just make these long, long sentences. But there's going to be a lot of changes. As I said, you know, Mark asked the question, is there any good news? I'm excited about the future. I am pumped because I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for disruptive solutions in these various marketplaces. So, you know, Mark, that was a bad answer to a really good question, but maybe it's worth a cup of coffee and another Zoom call sometime.
Terrific. Well, unless there are any other questions, you know, I've got some closing remarks. Any more questions for Don? Well, thanks all for attending today. Don, it's an excellent presentation. Really pleased that you were able to spend some time with us.
Well, thank you. By the way, one of the thoughts I'll leave you with is a quote that I love from Samuel Johnson, who was an 18th century English essayist and writer. And he wrote once time is, believe me, sir, that knowing that you will be hung in a fortnight is a wonderful way to get your mind to concentrate and focus. And we are living in difficult times right now, so we've all got the need to focus.
Absolutely.